And if you're just joining us, we are on another episode of Media Essential Workers, and I'm going to introduce to you Brian, who's looking a little bit like Sven Gulli today. Brian, tell us why that is.
Well, I have this lovely candle right here because we still don't have power from the storms that rolled through here. It was pretty scary over here on the north side for a little bit, and that was 2.5 hours ago. We still don't have power, and I just spent the past hour out in the yard cleaning up tree limbs in my yard in the street, walking around the neighborhood, seeing if anyone else needed help. And we got hit pretty hard up here. A lot of smashed cars, a lot of down trees. So
You
that's why I'm
know,
looking like a little Svengoolie. See my lighting.
oh, so you got some candle lighting, right? Show us the magic that makes you pop behind this dark background today.
Here's this candle. This is my candle being lit by,
Yeah,
and back here I have my backlight.
like a
So
true professional, you got the 3-point lighting going, even in a blackout here.
I have the uplight. I have the anchor lighting.
That's great. So with the modern technology, even though you are suffering a blackout-like condition, we're still able to kind of get us on the air here. And
Yep.
again, that's I think a big part of what we do as television photojournalists is that we're able to take less than ideal situations and put on a production, which is evidently
Yeah.
what you're doing. You're sitting there in a blackout, coming to us live.
It's going to get darker too as the sun goes down. But yes, we. I feel like my training in almost 30 years of working in television has kind of trained me to prepare for any situation. So I'm here. You may not be able to see me soon, but I'll be here and you can hear me at least.
And that's the other thing. As I was watching the how do you even say it? Derjacho?
The ratio? I don't know.
Oh yeah, the storms as they rolled in. So I'm
Yeah.
joining you from the Lisle, Illinois area, right by Naperville. I was watching the radar and I was wondering if we would even have the power and the Wi-Fi to actually put on the show today. But luckily, in the studio, we had some problems earlier. But in time for our 8 o'clock, we were good to go. And you've made it work over there. How long have you been without power?
Well, it's what, like 8 o'clock now. We've been without power since around 5:30.
Okay. But hey,
Yeah.
you were able to make it work by candle lighting. One thing I did want to jump into today, because there's a lot going on. If
Uh-huh.
you're just joining us today, and I'm talking to all our media essential workers who are going to be reporting tomorrow, right around when we came on at 8 o'clock, it's not being called a curfew, but there's actually going to be some limitations in the coming in and out of the downtown area. The mayor talked about that today from 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. So if you're going to go to work tomorrow, like I myself will be doing, make sure to make reasonable accommodations to go earlier. But Brian, I did want to talk to you about the fact that you were working last night. Tell us what went down.
Well, it was your typical Sunday night during the pandemic when it wasn't too busy. Wasn't a whole lot going on. In fact, for those of you who don't know, I'm a photojournalist over at ABC 7 here in Chicago, and the weekends are slow. Nobody does too much of anything downtown. Our station is located downtown at State and Lake, and because there's a pandemic and we try to practice social distancing and everything, the way our station is set up is that a lot of people work remotely, and us as photographers, they want us to come in, get our vehicle, get our gear, and immediately leave the building and sit outside until we get a call or a text, an email, whatever, to go to our assignment. It was just very slow last night. And the last 3 or 4 hours of my shift, there was just nothing going on. Now, granted, my shift was one where it's very specific, where I would cover a breaking news event. We had crews out there covering stories, various stories throughout the day, but my job was yesterday to just kind of hang out in case there's a fire or a shooting or any kind of accident that might be. I could race over there, put a picture on the air, to give it to the viewers watching the whole picture, and that's fairly common. And there was nothing going on downtown last night. I mean, zero. It was very quiet. I was just sitting there watching the people walk around State and Lake, and nothing going on. 11 o'clock, I got off on time, went home, went to bed. at about 3 a.m.
So I'm just going to set the narrative and kind of paint a picture of how it's been for a lot of us and any of our viewers who are watching who are outside the media industry. Those who are watching who are with us kind of understand this. We've been doing a lot of like staging because, again, the situation is such that we shouldn't be going into the stations. We got to keep socially distant. You'll see a lot of stations that we're staging, which is sitting and waiting for our breaking news dispatch in the truck. So my assumption is you were probably around the State and Lake area, kind of waiting to be dispatched somewhere or wherever.
Exactly. On a normal day before the whole pandemic, we have a photog lounge so we can hang out, or in the garage, in the basement of ABC7 at State and Lake. And, there are times, as long as we're in the building and they tell us where to go, we can jump in the vehicle and go. So that's why if we're not assigned anything, you'll see if you ever drive by there on Lake Street, you'll see a couple of ABC7 news trucks that are marked. Some are not. And we just kind of hang out, wait for our assignment because they don't want us in the building. And the reporters actually drive their own cars these days. It used to be, as you know, over at NBC5, everybody would ride together. And now we all drive separate vehicles because we are trying to do our part to social distance.
Absolutely. And that's some discussion we've had with photographers across the TV stations in the city is what the protocol is. Are people riding together? Are they staying separate? And there's a lot of kind of, because again, we're in a situation, we're telling a story, but we haven't dealt with this before. So there's a lot of kind of feeling it out and seeing what the comfort level is with the reporters, photographers, field crews, and which way people feel most comfortable going. We were in a situation a couple months ago that we find ourselves in again, which was security was needed to go out with us because we were covering incidents of civil disobedience. And again, I was talking to some of our membership, being the union vice president until midnight last night, and then was woken up again by actually somebody on a text group that works at your station saying, "Hey guys."
That text group. I saw all the messages. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, it really was something that nobody was expecting. Mondays are typically somewhat slow days. We expect activity on Friday. What was your reaction to hearing about this? And you were actually in some of the civil disobedience about a couple, what was it, a month back?
Yeah, end of May, early June. Yeah, I was same type of thing. That we knew there were going to be some protests, which we expected to be large, but we expect them to be peaceful, and they were for the most part back in May. Then when the sun went down on that Saturday, things just went sideways real quick. And I kind of feel like that's what happened last night. I wasn't there, but I did wake up around 3 a.m. to texts and emails and just the idea that something's going on. And I turned the TV on, and I turned to ABC7. Sorry, I wasn't watching NBC5, but I saw
boot him from the show. Boot him.
I saw our reporter Jessica D'Onofrio walking around State Street, and that's when you're groggy and you're tired and you're like, what is going on? Yeah. You see cars flying by, you're hearing gunshots, and you're like, man, I would not be there. And she's wearing a bulletproof vest, and I'm like, what is going on? And I still am not completely 100% sure of why everything happened the way it did or how it was organized, but unfortunately it did. Working in the media, we got to be prepared for anything at all times.
Right. We were talking about the photog lounge before. I always call it the photog ready room because it's almost like you're sitting there, but you're always in a state of, okay, at some point we're going to have to go. It's never like, it's not a lounge in the traditional sense. It's like, okay, we're waiting for the call. It's very much like, I say in a way like firefighters, right? You're waiting for something that you have to respond to.
Or we're like Goose and Maverick, waiting to get in our plane and take off.
And there's that. So I will tell you this. It looks like an influx of people just joined us. If you are watching this interview with myself, Raza Siddiqui, Brian McMurray, you're probably wondering why he's sitting there by candlelight. And the reason for that, again, is the derecho. I think that's how you pronounce it. The derecho that came through, kind of disrupting everything everywhere and putting you without power for just in time for our show today.
Yeah. I was, and I think, Sarah, we were texting and we were wondering if this was even going to happen. But, like every good live shot in TV news, you find a way to make it happen. Whether it's with bubble gum and tape, you make it happen, right?
That's it. You figure out a way to put it on air. And that's what we're happy to do today. I want to now take a step back. We talked a little about what we've been dealing with and what we're going to be dealing with the next couple of days. The point of this show has always been to kind of introduce us to each other, especially now that we're physically separated. we've seen each other on the streets for years. We might know someone's name and not much more than that. So this is a way to introduce each other. So tell us a little about you. I know that that you started your career at CNN. Tell us tell us how that happened. The timing seemed to work out pretty well, actually, for you.
It did. It did. So I went to college down at SIU in Carbondale. I'm a Saluki. Shout out to all the Salukis out there. For those of you who don't know, SIU has one of the top TV and radio schools in the country, and it has for a long time. Constantly winning Emmy awards for that market, which is market 78, which is 78, but they still beat the locals in viewers. They don't really do viewers because it's a PBS station that's on campus there, but they really teach us a lot. And because of that, there's a pipeline to many places. There's a pipeline to Hollywood. If you want to be in news, there's a huge pipeline of Salukis who work in at CNN. And I just happened to meet one 6 months before I graduated. He came in for some sort of conference. We stayed in touch. I sent my resume, and I always tell people I'm happy to say that I got hired at CNN before I ever graduated. It was about 2 hours before my last final exam. That I actually
I bet you blew that final exam off.
Yeah, exactly. At that point. Like their final exams at SIU anyway. It's known as a party school, and it is, but it is a good TV program there. So, we learned a lot. I graduated, and I immediately went right down to Atlanta, worked for CNN for a couple of years. And sorry, I keep wiping my face. It's getting warm in here with no AC.
Well, I assume with the candle lighting you up from beneath, the temperature you're slowly roasting, aren't you?
A little bit. I'm just trying not to keep things from catching on fire, right? So, so I went to Atlanta. I really liked Atlanta. When I was in at CNN, I kind of worked my way up the ladder a little bit. I was doing some field sound work. I was doing a little bit of editing, but eventually I kind of found a niche as it's kind of funny. They don't even have this position anymore, but I was the tape playback operator for the Larry King live show for about a year and a half. So that was fun. You're constantly switching the tapes out of the machines, and now everything's digital. They don't even have videotape, but it's kind of cool, kind of a lot of fun, because Larry King was a hoot. And then, CNN is such a big organization that, it's very hard to move up into some real positions where you can make a career out of it. So I decided, I wanted to go more local news. So I actually I got a job.
I'm going to actually stop you here and ask you, was being a television photographer something you always wanted to do? Was it a childhood dream, or was it something you found along the way? What inspired you to follow this path? Because obviously you've stuck with it a while, so there must be something that invigorates you.
Well, it's kind of funny because, they say, what is it, 70, 80%, whatever the number is, people that go to school for something choose something else as a career path, right? But I knew at an early age, I loved watching sports growing up. I was a huge Cub fan growing up, and I loved Chicago. And, early on, I kind of set some goals that, one, I wanted to somehow come to Chicago, live near Wrigley Field. And I'm really going against the grain here, but I really wanted to work for WGN because that's where all the Cub games were at the time. And I set those goals at an early age, and I can get to that later, but I actually achieved those goals. I've shot many games for WGN and all the other sports networks, Cub games, Sox games. So originally I wanted to be a sports photographer for the live broadcasts. But then when I got to CNN, I saw kind of how that worked. And, even in school a little bit, I was a news photographer, and I kind of enjoyed it. And so I kind of got the bug. And I really like the production side of it. Don't ask me to write anything because I can't write a darn thing. But the production side I really liked, and I found that I was pretty good at it. And I just stuck with that. And the news bug caught me, and I enjoyed the lifestyle of the breaking news and the whatever could pop up at any time. So I caught it, and I caught it good, and. After almost 30 years, I'm still doing it. So,
As we talked about, a lot of times you're sitting somewhere, you're waiting for something. You never know what to expect. That's one of the things in this line of work. You never know when you start your shift where it's going to take you. One of your first, as a matter of fact, your first Emmy was based on being somewhere and catching on tape something that was not expected. Tell us what that was.
Very much so. Yeah. So you know how it is. I mean, anybody watching this that works in news, you know how it is. You could be sitting there just waiting for your assignment, and then 2 seconds later, you're right in the middle of something. You were like, "What just happened here?" So yeah, to that point, 1996, I was in Atlanta working for the local CBS affiliate, and that was the summer of the Olympic Games in Atlanta, which was a lot of fun. And my assignment one night was to go over to the Olympic Park and stay late and shoot one of the free concerts they had in the park, which was awesome. You know, they always had great headliners every night, and this night it just happened to be James Brown, so I loved it, right? And where I was staged, almost in front of the stage with my camera shooting, to my right, the Olympic Park bombing goes off. So I was in the park that night, and everyone there really didn't understand what was going on. They thought maybe it was a firework that was a mishap, or maybe some sort of the show that wasn't, planned out right. But turns out it was a serial bomber. And so like any photog does, you just start shooting. You don't even think what you're doing. You just say, I got to record it, right? And so when I finally got out of there, just got to a point where I could feed the video back, because we didn't have technology like we do today. I actually had to get to a feed point.
Well, tell me this. I just want to, at what moment did you realize that this was something, like you were talking about, people thought it was fireworks, that this was something a lot more malicious, something that this isn't what you guys thought it was? What was that transition like when you went into slow mode?
It was pretty scary, actually. It was almost immediately, because I have my tripod and my camera, I'm shooting, and hear this go off, and I turn to look, and I'm like, okay, that's different. Then I see people running opposite direction with a look of terror on their face, and it wasn't just one person. It was thousands of people that were in this crowd. So I was like, okay, something's not right. And that's when you kind of start processing, okay, is this a malfunction? Is this, whatever? You don't think a backpack bomb, but that's exactly what it was. And then when the influx of, all these Secret Service police and FBI and ATF start rolling in, then oh geez, we got something going here. So I shot everything. I had enough. Back then we shot on videotape, which was 23 minutes long. The tapes. I think I had 3 or 4 of them, and I filled them all up.
Let me ask you this. So you're right there when it happens. Obviously, like you said, Secret Service, police, first responders are rushing there. How far back were you kept, or being that you were literally right there? Tell us what that was like. I mean,
it was off to my right, because I was shooting the stage, which was in front of me. It was off to my right, and you hear it, and you I didn't see it happen because I was looking forward, but to my right, and you obviously think, okay, that's something you don't hear every day. It was loud and it was a little terrifying, but you think, okay, maybe it was just something, accident, whatever. Then when I start seeing these people running, that's when you kind of think differently. And then when you see all the people, dressed in military garb, and you got the long guns, and you start thinking, wow, okay, something's up. And honestly, I still didn't know for a while what I was shooting. I was just shooting it because that's what we're taught to do. You shoot first, ask questions later, right? So that's what I did. And when I finally got a chance, and also, I'm sure you can understand this, when we're in situations like that, you become hyper aware, and you're so focused on what you're doing, you may not understand that the trouble you're in around you, or the danger that might be around you. I mean, you're aware of it, but not really. You know what I mean? You're thinking, I got to get this video. I got to do that.
Well, we were actually talking about this with another guest, and I've had this moment too, where you almost get filtered in. You're looking through the viewfinder, so you're almost seeing it as though you're watching it on television. So you get very focused and drawn there. I mean, a little known fact about me is that I'm scared of heights, but when I get a camera to my eye, I'm not. It's just one of those things, like you said, you become very focused on very tunnel vision. So what happened then?
Well, I kept shooting. I don't know, maybe it was an hour, maybe it was 2 hours. You kind of lose track of time. And then the police kept moving everybody back, and they kept moving everybody back and back and back. And finally, I got to a point where I saw one of the live trucks, the microwave trucks. Because back then, that's the only way we could get video back to the station. There was no cell phones. There was no, Dejeros or live views. Any of this technology we have today, I actually had to find a truck or walk it back to the station, which wasn't anywhere close to there. So I took it back. We got it all fed back. And, it happened like at 1:30 in the morning, which is odd, right?
Yeah.
And it just felt like it was 5 minutes and the sun was coming up. You had such adrenaline going. And so I finally, somehow, my car that I'd taken down there was kind of sequestered in this zone where they had blocked everything off. So I think my car was there for 3 weeks after. And so I had to get a ride back to the station because all my batteries had died, so I couldn't shoot anything. I get back to the station, I'm putting everything on charge, and they said, get to the studio. They want you on set to talk about, what you saw. Because, I think literally I was I don't remember any other cameras being there, like professional, like from a news station or anything like that. I don't think anyone else was there but me. So, I think it's because I volunteered because I loved James Brown at the time and I wanted to shoot it. And I said, hey, I'll stay. I want him in charge of the overtime, so. Just happened to be the right place at the right time. But I went back to the station. I sat on the set. And the video
any video that you see from that event, I can even in my mind think of that video that would have been your video.
Yeah,
likely or 100%.
Go over the video that I shot, which was kind of surreal, with the anchors on the set. We barely go to the studio, let alone we're never on the air. So it was kind of a surreal moment. And then, then when I informed, everybody kept saying, hey, great job. And, you're so confused. You're like, okay, what's great about this? And at the time, I still didn't really understand the magnitude of what was going on. But apparently, it was fed out to CBS Network, and they were showing it around the world. So before I ever even got home the next morning, that video had gone around the world, which was a pretty big feat back then because, we had technology. But like I said, not like today when you can flip a couple of switches and be live around the world instantly now. It was a little more of a daunting task to do it, So wow. So it was pretty cool. And it ended up later on, whatever the year that was, when the Emmys award, that's when I won my first Emmy award for that, because it was just right place at the right time. I didn't do anything different that you would have done or any other photographer had done. It was just, having the mind to do the job in the face of adversity.
I'm going to mention one of the things that sticks in my memory that growing up and watching local news, I lived in Massachusetts, and here's another video that kind of went across the world really quickly. Maybe you remember this, maybe you don't, but there was a Providence, Rhode Island, there was a fire, and there was a photographer who just happened to be, they were covering something else like yourself, and basically backtracked and got the shot of just the fire going through the ceiling, going through the walls. And again, that's one of the situations where, people are fleeing past him, but it's that filtered tunnel vision that we were talking about, where he's backtracking, he's making his way to the door safely, but documenting and providing kind of the vision of what happened to everyone else watching. And it's just these are the moments that really not only tell the story, but become the historical context for these stories.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, looking back on it, even years after, my friends would say, are you crazy? What are you doing? What were you thinking going in there? You're going towards the action and everyone else is running with scared looks going the other direction. And I'm like, yeah, you're not thinking, you're only thinking about getting the shot or getting the, find out what's going on and trying to be, get that perfect shot so you can tell the story and have people know what's really going on.
You're absolutely right. So in full disclosure, full honesty, usually I have Sarah here producing with me. She's doing something else. So I'm going to see, it looks like some guests are popping on. I'm going to see if I can pop anyone on. But if anything goes wrong, blame Sarah, who's not here producing with me today.
On here.
Yeah, we got Eva.
Oh, Eva.
Let's see if she pops on. Eva, can you hear us? Are you still with us?
I don't think her video's on.
Yeah, I think her video might not be on. I see her texting me here. I'll take it off for now. But Eva, just wanted to see if you could turn your video camera on. We would love to see if you've got a memory or something that you'd like to share.
Well, I'm like Mr. McMurray, where I'm in the dark too because of a power outage. So I turned my camera on, but there's not much to see. Do I have a memory of Mr. McMurray? Was that your question?
Yeah, or something you'd like to share with the viewers to give us context as to who Brian is.
Well, I actually met Brian. We worked together at a PBS station. And one of the things that I remember about him is I was producing a story on the Cubs super fan. And it was on a weekend and I couldn't find a cameraman. And I don't know if this will get you in trouble, Brian. Sorry. But Brian was so willing to help out and make sure that I got this story done. And I was really surprised that because I knew him as a production manager, and he came back with just the best footage for my story, and it was amazing. And I got to work with him in a different way, and it was definitely the first and a very momentous time that he really impressed me with his skills.
And if you're just watching this and wondering why 2/3 of our screen is in the dark right now, it's because we just had a derecho, and Brian and our guest Steve are both, I guess, living the consequences of that. Both of you guys without power.
No power here. No power.
Work's calling me too, and I'm like, guys, it's been out for 4 hours, so if my phone goes dead, but trying my best. Wanted to tune in.
Are you still working in television?
I'm not working in television. I work for the state of Illinois with the Illinois Housing Development Authority. So I work with them in their video producing and editing, getting word out about affordable housing. Awesome.
Well, it's thank you for joining us again. I'm sorry to put you on the spot. I saw you there, and usually Sarah talks to guests and tell them. I just popped you right on. So I appreciate you being a good sport about that.
Sure.
So we will pop you off right now. But Brian, that was kind of cool, huh?
Yeah, just to give that story some context, I was actually the production manager for WYCC TV here. It was here in Chicago on the South Side. We all got laid off because, they decided they wanted to turn the signal off. So it went off the air about 3 years ago. But yeah, I was the production manager there. Eva was a producer, and she didn't have a camera guy to go cover the Cubs in the playoffs. And I was like, I got you covered. Now, it's funny because of our union, which you're the vice president, we can't just, if we're in management, we can't go pick up a camera and go shoot something, right? There's kind of that fine line. So I went to the Cubs game and I used my cell phone. And I said, oh, you still need some video? And she used it, and she keeps talking about how it's the greatest video ever. And I'm like, that's just because I love the Cubs, It had nothing to do with the way I shot, I was just getting some video.
Well, you did what you were passionate about. And I think that's what really drives the people who do this, because it's a paycheck, from the people who have always kind of wanted to do this. They have a passion for it. And it's funny because that, I think, comes across in the video. People are always like, well, video may look the same. I think you can kind of tell what people are passionate about. And that brings us into the sports world. You have done a lot in sports. You have actually, let's start with sports. And then I want to get into the entrepreneurship side of Brian. But
Okay.
Let's talk about some of the sporting events that you've covered that have been very meaningful to you. And
like I said earlier, when I was a kid growing up, I played sports and I love sports. I love watching Cubs games. I love watching Bears games. And I knew that somehow I just wanted to be a sports camera guy. And so, with that in mind, when I studied TV in college, I did a lot of that. And again, it's just hanging around, trying to meet the right people, being in the right place at the right time. Again, my skills are not any more better than any other Joe Schmo who can get behind the camera and follow a football or follow a hockey puck or whatever. It's just something I really loved. And again, my passion has always been the Cubs. And so when I came to Chicago, I knew that's what I wanted to do. And, you if you really want to do something, you go do it, right? You don't wait for the opportunity to come to you. You go do it. And that's what I did.
Well, I got to ask you that because it's not always easy. Sometimes you want to do something, but the opportunity is not present, readily available.
Right.
How'd you hustle yourself into that position? Get yourself
in a
position
where
they were
anything else in life, but especially in TV.
Mm-hmm.
I think attitude plays a big part of it, because if you're willing to, if someone calls you to work a football game, a Bears game, for instance, in December, and it's going to be a snowstorm, and that it's going to be 20 below. a lot of people are going to say, yeah, I'm good. Yeah, I'd rather stay home. But you know what? I love it so much. I've done that, and I've always been in the part where I love being behind the camera, but I love the whole production so much, and I love how it works. I mean, I still can't believe how it works. I know how it works, but it's still amazing to me that they can back a 53-foot truck up to a stadium, unpack it, plug in a few cables, flip a switch. The whole world could be watching the game. So yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with attitude. I think a lot of it has to do with teamwork. Are you a team player? Because a lot of times, stuff happens, and you may, sometimes, even if I've been behind the camera for 30 years, if somebody said, hey, we had someone call out and there's no one to work, and you come pull some cable, of course I'm going to go pull some cables. You know what I mean? Of course I'm going to be out there getting dirty and muddy if it's raining. But that's just because, to be in this business, you got to be a team player. You can't be selfish. And, anyone who is probably didn't last too long.
And I think, the kind of the magic you describe about having that truck back up and the signal goes to the world. I think that for those who are actually truly passionate about this industry, you never truly lose that. I mean, I still, when I see a news truck, when I see a live truck as a kid, I was always fascinated. And sometimes I still feel the same way. Like I'll see another truck, like even on a day off, and my wife will be like, oh my God, here he goes again. Cause I'm like a moth to a flame. Like, hey guys, what are you doing? What are you working on? This and that.
Totally.
No, and I'll share another story. Once I went to go pick up my wife. She used to work at, what was it? IIT, right by police headquarters. And you remember a couple of years back, there was a shooting that happened at Starbucks right there. And
Yes.
We come out right as it happened, and my wife is still trying to figure out what's going on. Meanwhile, I got my cell phone and I'm charging kind of where the crime scene's going to be. And I think it's just something that's kind of in our blood, where we are journalists, we're storytellers. Yourself describing just the passion for
even on our off days.
That's it. I mean, again, like even telling the story, the whole purpose of this is to tell the story of the storytellers, to find out the people. This is what I came to find when talking to other photographers, journalists. A lot of us don't have boring stories. It's hard. It's very hard to get a job in this industry and to persevere in it. And people usually have creative stories or interesting stories about their track to get there, which is what I think it's very important to shed a light on.
Yeah, and even in times when I haven't worked full time at a news station, and I think this is why I've been successful. Is the old saying, you got to diversify your portfolio. So I've done all kinds of music stuff. I've done music series for PBS. I've done weather stuff. I did some freelancing stuff for Weather Channel. I was talking to my kids earlier about in Florida. You got to be diverse, and then because of that, you meet so many people. And then if you are able to have a relationship with these people and not act like an idiot and not act like you deserve to be there, but act like you're grateful that you're there. That's how you get gigs. Like you asked me what I've done. It's been pretty interesting. As far as sports, and the three that pop into my head was I got to be behind the camera for the Yankees Marlins World Series back in 2003. And then I also was lucky enough, and this is, again, totally right place, right time, knowing the right person. I got to be behind the camera for the Super Bowl in Miami when the Bears played the Colts. Now, I got hired to do that months out, not knowing it was going to be the Bears. And I'm just like, holy cow, it's the Bears, Huh. But I will tell you, even though they lost that game, the best part of that gig was watching Prince play the halftime of that show. I don't know if everybody remembers, but that was the show where everyone considers like the most perfect halftime show ever in the history of the Super Bowl, because he was playing Purple Rain and it was actually raining. And it was so cool, man. And it was just, I go back and look at it on YouTube sometimes, and it still gives me chills because it was just the perfect experience. But I will say this, again, being a Cubs fan, that doesn't compare to 4 years ago when I was working for MLB Network, and I got to be not only part of the broadcast for the Cubs World Series, but also my camera position was in the Cubs dugout for all the games at Wrigley. Now, I mean, that's just like bucket list stuff for me, and it was just cool. And I have my daughter, I took a ton of pictures, and my daughter helped me put together a nice big scrapbook, and I got all this mementos, and I still look at it and be like, I can't believe I did that.
Huh. We got to talk about, we can't get into this and not talk about the kind of hit that the sports world took. The early part of the 3 months, and you helped me with this, Brian, putting me in touch with people who actually needed information about temporary unemployment, pandemic unemployment act assistance. These were a lot of both of our friends, people who were affected and who needed to know. What has it been like? I'm sure you keep in touch with a lot of these guys.
I do, and I try to help where I can. And I'll be honest, there are a couple of times a year where in the sports world, it is busy, busy, busy. It's the time of year when your winter sports, the Blackhawks and the Bulls, are coming to an end. And if they make the playoffs, it's coming in the springtime, and also when the Cubs and the Sox and the Chicago Fire start their games up. So there's a point in time in the spring, usually around March, going into April, sometimes even May. They're games every day, and the crewing companies have a hard time filling those slots. Sometimes there have been many days where in the past, I can think just offhand, I'll be on, they'd say, okay, you're going to be on camera for the Bulls playoff game. Oh no, we need to switch you over to Chicago Fire because we need some coverage over there. And then like the next day I'll be at White Sox and be like, well, no, we need you to go up to the Cubs because they added an extra camera. So it's just this craziness. And the same thing in the fall. But this pandemic hit at exactly that time in the spring, and everybody was geared up. Everybody had been booked, every day for a good month and a half. And all of a sudden, one day, it just all stops. And I feel bad for these guys that's all they do, because that's a good living, and it just stopped. And there's no safety net.
And that's the thing. It hit everyone at once, and not just one sport, but multiple. And one of the good news that initially came out with this is that companies we found were doing the right thing. We're paying people through certain portions of their contract to kind of help keep them afloat. But this, like most things, didn't last infinitely, and there's a lot of uncertainty going forward. I hear from a lot of people, if there's no college football, this is really going to hurt us. This is really going to have an impact on us. What are you hearing?
Before you go on, I just want to say I want to give you guys props at the union, because I know, I gave you a list and you reached out and you would have these workshops, and I know a lot of guys really appreciate that. And so, we appreciate what you guys are doing to support us, because a lot of guys didn't know and they just needed the information. And I really think what you did, along with all the other union members, they really stepped up at a time of need.
And I think that's vitally important, because again, as a union, you don't exist without servicing your members. And when people need you the most is the time that you got to be out there and proactively get that message across. And people were very appreciative. And thank God that I'm seeing more and more people communicating with more and more people, that although sports haven't picked up anywhere near where they were, I'm seeing more and more Facebook posts pop up about work that they are doing, which is, of course, exactly what we want to hear.
Right. And it was tough. I mean, it was just that perfect storm. It hit right as we were going into March, which was the super busy time for all sports TV workers, whether it's camera guys who sit in the truck, doing the replays, or the guys running around pulling the cables. I mean, it affected everybody. When that's your livelihood, and that's you, there are guys that have been doing this for 40 years and they get what's called a package, which means they're penciled in for every game. That's their job. And if they can't do it, they can't be there. It's their responsibility to get someone to work for them. And when that goes away, it just stops through nobody's fault. It just sucks.
Oh, absolutely. One of these situations that we were talking about, some of the uncertainty that hit, there's nothing more uncertain than having your own business. We've talked to small business owners, even in the community, about just the constant battle to make sure that you're always relevant, that you're always bringing a profit. You yourself were an entrepreneur. You, for a while, took a step back from the whole hustling for your next gig, I guess you'd say, to actually hustle for every gig. Tell us about that.
Well, I think every photographer out there will tell you that at some point they've had dreams of starting their own video production business, whether it's shooting weddings or whatever. It's hard when you have a full-time job. I mean, and I tried to do that with a buddy of mine years ago, and it's just, the risk is not worth the reward when it comes to that stuff. But I will say, about 16 years ago, I did have an epiphany that, I was working for CBS News and I was traveling a lot and I was just tired. And, pulled up roots, moved to Florida, where my ex-wife lived, and her family lived, and we wanted to start a family. And I said, what, we had saved some money, and I said, let's just chill for a little bit. Let's just take a breath, see what's out there. And that's when I started doing some work for the Weather Channel and some of the local news down there in Miami. And then I just got bored, and that's when I started. That's when I got to do the World Series, 2003. And then, to be honest, I was just bored, and an opportunity came up there was a business for sale, and we ended up buying it. It was a lighting and grip business. And for, people in the TV world probably don't know a lot about what lighting and grip is, but I'll just break it down for people who don't.
Before you do, I do want to ask something that people might not know about lighting and grip, but everyone knows about the fear of going a path and always having done that and taking a step back and trying something new, especially investing in a business when you haven't been a business owner. Tell us what that was like, and then tell us about
it. It was scary. I mean, it was, but I've always kind of had an entrepreneurial spirit, and I've always kind of had a spirit of, I'm not afraid to take a chance. I'm not, and sometimes it gets me in trouble. Other times it works out great. And this particular time, we saw a business that was for sale. It was a lighting and grip business in Miami. And basically what that is, it's a warehouse full of just stuff. And we had 6 big trucks, and these trucks were stuffed with, lighting and grip stuff, as far as camera dollies and camera track and lighting stands and big lights, small lights, car lights. You could put small little lights when you're shooting a car scene. Basically everything you need to make a movie, to make a TV show, to make a music video, everything you need except for cameras and audio. So if you think about that, it's all the grip gear, all the knuckles and all the the piping that you put on a car to shoot a car scene, or a process trailer. You put the trailer or car on a trailer and you pull it behind a truck, and you set the camera up on the truck, and your director's there watching the monitor, and the actors are in the car. It looks like they're driving, but they're really being pulled by a truck. So it's stuff like that was really a lot of fun. And I learned so much, even though I had worked in TV for a long time. It kind of translated, but it was a whole new world. And
kind of like movie making, right? And I got to ask you this.
It's exactly what it was, except for I was just a supplier. I got to go out on a lot of movie sets.
That's what I was going to ask you. So you were the supplier. Did you try to get yourself some consultancy services just to be involved in this, just to see how things go? Like, I can advise you. Let me see your setup.
Yeah, no, there were many times when something really cool was going on, and I would have to go down to the set to make sure everybody had everything they needed. You know what I mean?
All right, and then just stick around there for a bit.
Yeah, you hang out. You eat the craft services food. And you're just like, okay, this is the best job ever. So 2 notable ones I'll talk about were kind of funny. One, we got a job, very secretive job down in the Florida Keys, and we didn't know much about it until we actually got down there. And so I had my guys take all the gear down there, and they called me back and they said, "Listen, we're going to call you. We need you to bring some stuff down here." I'm like, okay. It seemed kind of weird because it was on a weekend, and I paid guys to do that for me,
Yeah.
So sure enough, they called and they said, "Well, bring us this, that, and the other." They didn't really need that stuff. It was a photo shoot with J-Lo, and it was for this new perfume. And she was doing not only the photo shoot, it was a video shoot for a commercial. Needless to say, she was in a very skimpy string bikini, and it was a 3-day shoot. And I spent the weekend in the Keys. So that's all I have to say about that. So
I would have signed up for that consultancy service
right,
too.
Exactly. The other one was, and this was a fun one too. We get a call from Saturday Night Live, and they were going to be in Miami to shoot one of those digital shorts that they have. And it was Andy Samberg, who's now a bigger star. At the time, he was just a guy on Saturday Night Live, and he wrote this song, "I'm on a Boat." I don't know if you guys remember that song. They were coming to Miami to shoot the music video for that. So we did all the lighting and grip for that movie. And the funny thing is that, we established this great relationship with him, and it led to other jobs. And I was down there, I was on the boat, and it was great. But at the same time, there was this new technology they were using at the time. It was called a red camera. And the guy that was shooting it, he didn't really understand the technology, and half their footage was in the tank. It wasn't good. So they didn't know that. So they came to Miami and they shot for 3 days. and it was great. It was a lot of fun. It was a party, and it was just so much fun. And we came back, and we were like, wow, that was so much fun. Then literally, I got a phone call from them saying, listen, some of this footage is bad. We need to fix this. I'm like, okay, what do you need me to do? And they said, well, you need to reshoot X, Y, and Z. And they said, well, we don't have a lot of budget. I said, listen, here's what we're going to do. I had this warehouse full of stuff, right?
Yeah.
It was just all this gear and all these trucks. We cleaned out the warehouse. We set up a giant 30 by 30 green screen. They flew down. They shot the scenes they needed on the green screen. We made it happen. They were happy. We were happy. It was just, and we got to be a part of that. And it turned out to be a really famous song at the time. So if you've never heard it, look for the "I'm on a Boat" on YouTube with Andy Samberg. You'll thank me later. It's very funny. So
I'm going to try to see if I can't pop that up. If Sarah was here, she'd pop it up for me. But
well, just a warning, there's a clean and a dirty version. So if you're going to play it,
advise everyone to watch the dirty version.
Yeah.
So again, it's one of those nights where I guess we need as much entertainment as possible. I got my lights back on just before we went on this. If you're just tuning in,
let me turn up my lights.
See, so Brian's a guy who knows how to make lighting happen, even in the most rudimentary way, because where he is right now, he got the whole 3-point lighting. If you look over his left shoulder, you see the little pop of the light in the back. But tell us this. So you had started, there it is. You had started your company. You had done a lot of very creative, interesting things. You somehow made your way back into television. What brings you to the city that we see you in now?
Well, I always loved Chicago, and I always kind of knew I'd be back somehow, some way. It just happened that we sold the business, and I got an offer to come back and work in Chicago, and I was glad I did because, I really love it here. And a lot of people will downplay Chicago, and they'll talk about the bad stuff, like this rioting that happened last night, this looting. Yeah, that happens, but I would say overall, the people are what make this city great. And, I love the history here. I love the architecture here. I love the people here. Anybody that lives here and is, a resident, not just some looter, someone look out for themselves. To me, there's no better city.
I think you're absolutely right. And speaking of people who and organizations who are looking out for other people, I do want to pop up this comment that Eva made. I popped it up earlier, but it's important for people to know the resources out there. Eva says, we just launched rental assistance for people who are behind on rent as a result of losing income. If I want to share, and I absolutely do. We've profiled a lot of people. Yeah, we've profiled a lot of people and a lot of organizations like the Chicago Headline Club, a lot of private organizations too that stepped up for our sports freelancers. Anytime there's a resource that can help our people, I think it's incumbent on us to share that. ERA.
Let me elaborate on that a little bit. She does all their social media for the Illinois. I hope I get this right. It's IDA, Illinois Housing Development Authority. And they are there to help people in times like this, the pandemic. You may be having a hard time paying your mortgage. They have all these assistance programs, and they just launched one this month. It's open now, I think. And I think they just crashed their website because so many people are applying. But if you're renting, and, because there's this whole thing with the $600 a month unemployment check that ended, right? The extra $600. So Illinois, where she works, the Illinois Housing Development Authority, is they launched this program to help people who are having a tough time paying their rent. And if you log on to their website and check it out, I mean, it's a great program. And, I've kind of, she won't like me saying this, but I've kind of helped her with the editing and the shooting of that a little bit. And, because it's a good program. What she does is important work.
No, absolutely. And what we do in terms of getting the message out is important work. And for something like this, which is definitely a good thing, which can help a lot of people, I think there's nothing wrong with putting the two skills together and making sure that the message is delivered as strongly as possible, which again is why I want to share this on the live feed. We oftentimes have
people in our industry, like we said, those sports guys, I'm sure some of them, are having trouble, and, I'm sure they're not proud of it, but, I'm glad we're highlighting this because, they don't have to tell anybody. Just go there and do it. And if it helps them, it helps one person, great,
You're absolutely right. I mean, just in the field that we work on, the Chicago Headline Club was offering grants to people. I should disclaim I have since become a board member of that organization, but I'm just highlighting what I have thought was a very forward thinking of them, that they put these grants together. And like you said, you don't need to tell anyone. A lot of people that we see on the streets were able to apply for this. And again, it was something that helped them through a time that was hard for a lot of people in our industry. And here's the thing, we're storytellers. We're out there and we never want to focus on ourselves, but every now and then it's important to focus on ourselves and make sure that we're able to provide the service, but be compensated for it. And when there's an organization like this, it's very important that we at least know what's out there and benefit ourselves with this knowledge. I'm going to try to, I'm sorry, go ahead, Brian.
No, I was just agreeing with you 100%. You know, it's important that, you know, you and I are fortunate, you know, we love what we do and we're still working. You know, there's a lot of people in our industry that are not so lucky. I mean, we were just talking about it earlier about the guys who just got laid off over at Channel 5. That sucks. And it's just the industry right now. But you know what? If we can help them in any way, we should. We owe it to them.
You're absolutely right. And again, this is one of those things where everyone in our industry needs to stick together. Our industry, whether print, broadcast, it's fundamentally changing. And it's very important for us. Again, part of, you see the lights are still flickering over here. I don't know if you just saw that.
Could you flicker them over at my house?
Right. See, this is where you should be grateful for what we have. But again, this is one of those situations where it's very important for us to be able to network and know what else is out there, what resources. We've been able to put some of our people in contact with people at other stations as well. And again, you cannot underestimate the importance of networking, which is why it's very important for us to get to know each other in this format. Yeah. I am going to say again, this is kind of my first time self-producing. I see someone with the tag, the greens on. If you can hear me and you want to pop on, give me a thumbs up and I will put you on to
Who
talk.
Is it, the Greens?
Yeah. The name is the Greens. Is that someone you know, Brian? Is that someone?
I know some people last name Green, but you know.
All right. Would you have a comment if I pop you on? Put a thumbs up if yes. Oh, hey, look at that. A thumbs up. So you are on with a couple of you are on with Brian. You got any questions, comments, memories you'd like to share? Hopefully these are the Greens you know, Brian.
Hey. Yeah. Oh, they're kind of breaking up. I think.
Yeah. Up in Wisconsin. So the Wi-Fi isn't the strongest, but at least they got the power. The derecho must not have them. Yeah, it looks like it froze up. You know what, guys? If you text me in the comment, I'll read any questions or memories you have. Again, you said they're up in Wisconsin, where they got the strong Milwaukee, so they should have a relatively strong signal. But I guess again, I learned the word derecho, so I'm going to use it as many times as I can. I guess the derecho didn't hit them as hard as it hit us down here. Again, sorry we couldn't get you guys on. It looks like the Wi-Fi was a little weak up there, but I'd be happy to share any questions or memories. But in the meantime, Brian, is there anything you want to leave people with in terms of you're a new person in the industry? We always hear this industry is, fluctuating. It's not as stable as it was during the heyday of television. Is it worth getting into? What's your take?
I think it is. I think we need young people to continue on because there's always going to be stories to tell. You can attest to this, not only stories to tell, but, part of the stories we tell are, uncovering that corruption and shining light on a darkness that needs to have some light shined on it, So I think if you're young and you like this and it's interesting, you should absolutely go for it. But you also need to know that it's going to be tough and you're going to have to work for little to no money, learning your skill and your craft, but that's okay because that's where some of your best memories are going to come from. And I think, just like I had a dream when I was a kid to, I grew up way downstate outside of St. Louis and I didn't like St. Louis. I liked Chicago. So I always wanted to come here. And I did. And so I think, you have to go through the trials and tribulations of just grinding it out, man. And if you can do that, you can cut your teeth and you can get some tough skin, go where you want to go and do what you want to do. It can be a grind, as with some crazy schedules and some, standing outside. Love life in the grind. That's what it's all about, man. And, if you enjoy it, I would say go for it. And it's not for everybody, I'll tell you that. but it's given me a rewarding career for 30 years, and I still love it. I still get excited about it. I'm like you said earlier, if I see a bunch of news trucks, I'm calling the station. I'm calling, hey, you guys know about this? I always do that. My kids are like, call it in, Dad. So.
Yeah, I think that's something that most of the families of people in this business know, that you can never really turn it off. It's not a 9-to-5 job. Rarely is it ever. And you're always kind of engaged because you're always a journalist. You're always a professional observer who wants to tell a story. I'm
sorry, go ahead.
No, well, I was just going to say, you've been able to do it, like you said, but also cross a few things off the bucket list too.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you said family, and I got to say this before we get off here, that, when you work these crazy shifts and you work long hours and, it's cold, it's hot, and you get grumpy, you got to give a shout out to your family for putting up with that, because, my schedule throws their schedule into a whirlwind. And, there are a lot of times I miss things and things you don't want to, but you have to go to work, right? And it's just the way it is. It's a 24/7 news business. And so I just want to say I wouldn't be here doing this if I didn't have the support of my family. So.
Well, absolutely. Shout out to families, and just what we've experienced with working in a pandemic. Again, this is another thing people don't realize. You go out there. We were deemed essential workers very early off in this pandemic. My wife, for instance, was working from home. You're going out there, and again, potentially bringing back something so that uncertainty kind of goes beyond what you are experiencing. And the whole family has to take on that kind of incumbent responsibility that, hey, he's out there making a living, doing what he loves, and it has an influence on us. And
yeah, totally,
the fact that our families, still let us do it is just something that we should 100% be thankful for. So I'm glad that you threw that out there. Any words you want to leave the people with today? Thank you again for taking this Friday or this Monday. It just feels like Friday because so much happened this Monday when you have no power and still made it so that you could come and join us. Any words you want to leave us with?
Well, no, I just think that, what, it's a very fickle business, and it can be, very frustrating at times. It can be very rewarding. And, as well as I do, when you're at work and you hear people just bitching and moaning sometimes, I think to myself, we got nothing to complain about. We're working in a great city. We got a great union. Almost everybody works at a great station that pays them a great living wage. We have nothing to complain about. We're doing the good work out there. And I will say this too, there are lots of people out there that, want to downplay and call it fake news. No, it's not fake news. What we're doing is telling the truth. People may not like that. People may not want us to expose the truth, but every day we're out there and all we do is tell the truth, and we try to tell both sides. So I'm going to stand up for that every time for people who say this is fake news. No, if you think something's fake news, you're looking at the wrong website. You're looking at the wrong channel, because nothing we do is fake. Everything is genuine. Everything is live. Everything is shot that day. And I'm proud of that, and I think you should be too. And I think anyone who understands what we do should I'm not going to say thank us, but should thank what we're doing, because we are telling stories, and it's important to do that. There are other people out there who are not doing that and have an agenda. Whatever, I can't change that, but just educate yourself and know the difference between real news and real fake news.
And let's be honest, this is nothing new. This is something that we were told when we were kids. Don't believe everything you read. Kind of gauge the veracity of these things. And I think that's another kind of product with what we've been trying to do by showcasing the storytellers, because none of us are going out there working ungodly hours in a pandemic to tell something the wrong way. We're doing that because we're passionate about, aside from providing from our family, also being able to tell a story about a community that we are not untouched by. There was a derecho that went by, and you're without power. You're a member of this community.
Yeah, and we live here. We're telling the stories about our community.
That's it. Well, thank you so much, Brian. I really do appreciate you joining us
today. I enjoyed it,
and
I would love to do it again. If somebody calls in sick on one of these shows, let me know. I'll fill in.
What I would love for you to do a little behind the scenes producing in terms of helping us kind of get some guys in the sports world who are again picking up, because I have talked to a lot of them with your assistance and kind of help navigate this whole process. But I'd like to find out firsthand what that experience was like and how they got through it, because these stories of inspiration and overcoming are really the stories I want to tell. So
Trust me, you want to talk to some of these guys. Some of them have stories you wouldn't believe. And there's some characters in there. They would make your ratings go through the roof. These guys are hilarious. They got stories that just, I mean, fascinating.
Well, I'll tell you, some of my best friends in the industry, in the sports world, were the ones who came at me, who were like, what are you doing for us, this and that? And then you have a conversation, you get to know where they're coming from. And they're like the best, most loyal people. Some of them have become very close friends. And I think, again, that's what it is. This dialogue, this communication is oftentimes there's a little, I'm not being heard. You listen to them, you have that dialogue, and a lot of things come into place, I think.
Well, I think that's what we all want in life, right? We want to be heard. We all have opinions, and we all have, unique points of views, and we just want to be heard. Everybody wants to be heard and validated. You're
absolutely right. Thank you again for joining us, Brian. I said this a little in the beginning of this segment too, but if you're going to work tomorrow until 6 a.m., it's going to be a little difficult to get into work. So make sure you allow yourself some time. Brian, I think you're going to be off tomorrow, right? So
I am tomorrow. I have a hiking day with my kids. So
that's awesome. Enjoy that. It's always so important to enjoy that family time. We really thank you for joining us. Thank you guys all for joining us today and listening to another story of another media essential worker, one of those who brings a story to us and is out there every day. Really appreciate you, Brian.
If anyone from ComEd's listening, get to work, will you?
And there you go. Talk to you guys later for our next episode. See you later. Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys.